authentic hadith, if they follow these two, meaning Abu Bakr and Umar, they will be guided. Okay, so we are obligated to follow al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, yani the four rightly guided Khulafa. However, if they oppose Allah, the Prophet ﷺ in their statements, yani unintentionally of course, okay, then we disregard, with all due respect to them, we still hold them in high status, in the same status. They haven't, their state, we don't belittle them in any way, shape or form, but we disregard that particular statement of theirs if it contradicts the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. This is al-adala, this is justice basically. The Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, then he mentions in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 7, pages 71 and 72, and something pertaining to at-Taqleed. Yani he speaks about taqleed, or following without an evidence. Taqleed doesn't mean literally blind following. It means following without an evidence. Okay? Taqleed is following without a dalil, without knowing the dalil. So the mustafti, the one who's doing, the one who's seeking the fatwa, who's called the mustafti, goes to the mufti and asks the mufti a question. The mufti answers him or her. But the muqallid, this person doesn't know how they derive the ruling. They take their answer at face value. Halal, halal, haram, haram. That's it. They don't know, they're blind. They don't realize what qawaid, what principles did he use. So this type of person is called muqallid. Okay, this is a person who is following without knowing the dalil. The Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah, he says, وَأَمَّا إِن قَلَّدَ شَخْصًا. However, if a person follows another person blindly, okay, or without a dalil, دُونَ نَظِيرِهِ, and disregards anyone else other than this person. They have one person, let's call this person Shaykh A, مثلا. This is the Shaykh that they want to follow. But the Shaykh, this particular Shaykh has other contemporary, there are other contemporaries, there are other people or scholars who are at the same level as this Shaykh. So he's saying, Shaykh is saying, دُونَ نَظِيرِهِ, he's following this particular Shaykh, Shaykh A or Shaykh Alif, دُونَ نَظِيرِهِ, without, and disregards all of the other shuyukh that are in at his level, بِمُجَرَّدِ هَوًا, just because of a desire, because of their own desire. So this is a muqallid, this is a person who follows this Shaykh out of hawa, out of desire, that's it. They don't really have a particular reason to follow him in particular. Okay, their reason isn't a reason connected to the akhirah, it's a reason connected to the dunya. وَنَصَرَهُ بِيَدِهِ وَلِسَانِهِ, and this muqallid, okay, he aids and he gives victory to this Shaykh and his opinions with his hands and with his tongue. مِنْ غَيْرِ عِلْمٍ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, without actually knowing that what this Shaykh is telling him is the actual truth. Do you understand the mas'ala? تصورتم المسألة? And the issue is we have Zayd, okay? Zayd wants basically an opinion, okay, wants a fatwa. But Zayd, unfortunately, because of his evil desires, he already has an answer in his head. So he goes and seeks a Shaykh who will conform to his own hawa or desires. And the Shaykh isn't at fault here. We're talking about Zayd. So the Shaykh then tells him a fatwa, and he tells him what Zayd wants to hear. It could be an issue pertaining to talaq, it could be something pertaining to divorce, it could be issues pertaining to wealth, to blood, it could be anything, okay? So then Zayd takes this fatwa, okay, at face value, and then he goes and spreads this fatwa, he aids and defends this fatwa. He doesn't go just and implement the fatwa, and then he keeps quiet because of his ignorance. He knows he's ignorant, but he goes and propagates this fatwa everywhere. In fact, Zayd may even go as far as trying to basically twist the meaning of the fatwa, or interpret the fatwa to suit his own desires or his own evil hawa. Okay? This is what the Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is describing. Okay, this is the type of person he's describing. What's his ruling? He says, فَهَذَا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. He says that this person is considered to be from the people of Jahiliyyah. وَإِنْ كَانَ مَتْبُوعُهُ مُصِيبٌ. Why is he from the people of Jahiliyyah? Because as a muqallid, as a person who doesn't have knowledge, who doesn't know where the Shaykh is getting his ruling from, that you are only allowed to basically implement and act according to the fatwa yourself, because it only concerns you. That's all. You can't go and basically propagate this fatwa and explain what the fatwa means, because you don't have the necessary tools and the necessary knowledge to do this. You are a muqallid. You have to know your place. You have to know your station. The Shaykh says that this person who does this is considered to be from the people of Jahiliyyah. He says then, وَإِنْ كَانَ مَتْبُوعُهُ مُصِيبًا لَمْ يَكُنْ عَمَلُهُ صَالِحًا. He says that even if the Shaykh that he is blindly following is musib, has spoken the truth in the fatwa, لَمْ يَكُنْ عَمَلُهُ صَالِحًا, then the muqallid, then their action is not considered to be righteous. Okay? So even if it ends up that the Shaykh is upon the haqq, his opinion is the truth, the fatwa is actually true, he's upon the haqq, but the muqallid, their action in going and propagating this fatwa and generalizing it is still considered to be salih. Afwan, غير salih, is still considered to be an action which is unrighteous. وإن كان متبوعه مخطئا. وإن كان متبوعه مخطئا. If the Shaykh he's blindly following is wrong in his fatwa, or has erred in his fatwa, كان آثما, then the muqallid is considered to be sinful. Okay? كمن قال بالقرآن برأيه. And this is a person, كمن قال بالقرآن برأيه, just like the person who speaks about the Quran with his opinions, who makes a tafsir of a verse through his own opinion. فإن أصاب فقد أخطأ. If this person who has spoken without knowledge and has spoken about the Quran without knowledge, if they in a fluky way, and if they speak the truth, then they are still considered to be incorrect. وإن أخطأ, and if they are incorrect, and that is the case, فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ, then let this person take his seat in the fire. He mentions this in Al-Majmu' al-Fatawa, chapter volume 7, pages 71 and 72. Do you all understand what the Shaykh here mentions? So this is a person who blindly follows a Shaykh and goes and spreads this fatwa, interprets this fatwa, aids this fatwa, blindly following without having any knowledge. This person is considered to be from Ahlul Jahiliyyah. Okay? Even if the Shaykh that they are blindly following is correct in their fatwa, then they are still considered to be sinful. Okay? If the Shaykh is incorrect in the fatwa, they are also sinful. The Shaykh, as a mujtahid, he has one reward. If he is correct, he has 2 rewards. If he is incorrect, he only has 1 reward, and he's not sinful because of the fact that he implemented the rules and principles of ijtihad. Naam. Naam.
For example, let's say a person, so you know how you said you have to, like, the person asks a person for fatwa, and he doesn't know the process of coming to that conclusion, coming to that answer, what qaida we use. Do we always have to ask for evidence? Like,
no, the muqallid doesn't have to ask for evidence, no. Because what will he do with the evidence if he's given the evidence? A muqallid, a person who, even if you give them the evidence, some awam, مثلا, majority of the Muslims, they ask you an issue and you give them the evidence. You say to them haram because of this. They won't know how the evidence is deduced from the evidence usually, because it's not, some evidences are not clear. Okay, so the muqallid doesn't have to ask, doesn't have to know the evidence. What we're talking about is not the muqallid's action of following the fatwa. We're talking about what the muqallid does with the fatwa. That's the problem. Okay? What can the muqallid do with the fatwa? Can a muqallid follow another muqallid who's following a mujtahid? No, you can't. A muqallid cannot follow another muqallid. The blind cannot lead the blind. Do you understand? Okay, so that's not how it works. If you Khatib al-Baghdadi, he talks about this issue at length in Adab al-Mufti wal-Mustafti. Ibn Abd al-Barr also mentions it, and obviously here look, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentions it. A person who's muqallid cannot go and spread that fatwa to another person. If the fatwa concerns him, we're not talking about fatwas like, for example, a person goes to a mufti and says, Shaykh, what is the ruling on the salah, salatul jama'ah? And he says, salatul jama'ah is wajib upon, etc. This is a ruling that it's clear from common sense, it encompasses the Muslims. So if the muqallid goes and says, oh, akhi, I've learnt today that salatul jama'ah is wajib mathalan upon men who are baligh, aqil, etc., etc. This isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about a fatwa that's specific to him. Okay, like for example, a person goes to a mufti and says to him, I divorced my wife. And the mufti asks him questions, in what situation were you in? And then the mufti then later finds that this person, when he was divorcing his wife, he was in a state of anger. Not just any anger, an anger that intoxicated him. Okay? But this is so intricate that the mufti had to ask many questions to come to that conclusion. So if, for example, this mustafti then takes this fatwa and then his friend goes and divorces his wife and he says, Akhi, were you angry? Yeah, khalas, she's not divorced. He took the fatwa of the mufti and implemented it on another person just because they shared one operative cause, which is anger. But it's not, al-mas'alatu laysat ala itlaqha. The issue isn't that simple. Just because you're angry doesn't mean that your divorce is revoked. Do you understand? It doesn't mean that your divorce doesn't count. We're talking about a specific type of anger which is intoxicating, an anger which the person has faqada wa'yahu, the scholars they say. This is a person who has who has lost all sense of reason while they were angry. They can't even remember it, and it happens to some people. It's madhmum, it's blameworthy for a person to reach that stage of anger, because you should do something about it before the anger reaches that level. You should go and make wudu, leave the house, go somewhere else and come back when you've calmed down. But in any way, the scholars, there's a difference of opinion, but the mufti has come to the conclusion that this talaq hasn't basically occurred because of what the information that he was given. So you can't, as a muqallid, I can't go and take this fatwa and implement it and give it to someone else who maybe has the same situation as me, but there's obviously differences. Do you understand what I'm talking? This is what the Shaykh is talking about, inshallah. Now,
just quickly, can I what you say? It's also not correct, if people nowadays what they do of forwarding translations or forwarding fatwas in regards to specific cases of specific people. And say, for example, some people they want to know the answer, but they search and then they take the answer direct of a fatwa that they found online or something.
Yeah, unfortunately nowadays there's a dhahira, it's become really widespread amongst many people, unfortunately, that they seek knowledge through fatwas. They go and seek knowledge through a fatwa. So this person will tell you, Sheikh bin Baz said this about this particular issue, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen said this about. We're not belittling the fact that you know the opinions of the ulama. This is very good, mashallah, it's good. But however, this is not how knowledge is sought. Nowhere will you find in the books of the scholars. If you go to Sir A'lam al-Nubala, our Salaf, and nowhere will you find that he sought knowledge through the fatwa of Sheikh so and so. There's a system that you have to follow. There's a methodology that you have to follow. If you really want to seek knowledge, then that's not the way to seek knowledge. You can't think to yourself that you have knowledge just because you know what this particular Shaykh has said with this particular issue, or in this particular issue. He may have changed his mind in a later fatwa. How do you know? Do you understand? Are you just that means, are you going to change your mind just like this? without knowing why he changed his mind. So there's a way of dealing with fatawa, and alhamdulillah, they still, having knowledge of them is still praiseworthy, but we have to use them properly. We have to use them properly, in light of the Quran and the Sunnah, because we cannot, and the dangers of elevating fatawa more, and putting them in a pedestal, in a position in which, in a high, really high pedestal, is that you neglect the Quran and the Sunnah. Do you understand? So you see someone, for example, a muqallid telling you, for example, Shaykh so-and-so said this, and then you say to them, Akhi, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says this, and they're lost, and then they end up telling you, yeah, but the Shaykh said this, the Shaykh must know this. This is the hujjah of this is the exact same thing that the muqallidun of the atba' of the madahib al-arba'a used to do. Exact same thing. So then he puts you in a situation, in a position where it's as though you're belittling the Shaykh, حفظه ta'ala, rahimahullah ta'ala, whoever. It's like you're belittling the Shaykh's opinion. Do you understand? That's not the case. Maybe the Shaykh was talking about a particular situation or scenario, and I've heard people telling me, Shaykh so-and-so said this and I'm mentioning something, and then I'll go and do a bahth later on and find that the Shaykh was talking about the East and this brother was talking about the West. Two totally different cases, subhanallah. So even when you mention a fatwa, you have to know exactly what the Shaykh said. You have to know in what context the Shaykh was talking about. What was the situation behind it? What was the question? Some people don't even read the question. They go straight to the fatwa. The fatwa, for example, has a title, ruling on a person who does this and that mathalan. And they don't read the actual question, all the situations that are described in the question. They go straight to the answer. And then they think, khalas, this is the ruling. And that's very dangerous, subhanallah. And that causes more harm than good. So it's very, very important that you know exactly what you're talking about. If you want to become a student of knowledge, you cannot become a student of knowledge through fatwa only. You have to go through you have to actually, believe it or not, study. You have to make an effort. You have to go and memorize the Quran. You have to go back to the al-mutun al-ilmi. You have to memorize the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to learn usul al-fiqh. You have to know how to interact between two evidences which are outwardly they are contradictory to each other. You have to know all of these things. When you hear the Prophet ﷺ say, whoever enters the masjid or whoever enters the masjid and let him pray 2 rak'ats. Okay? And then you hear another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that there is no salah after Asr until the sun sets, and after Fajr until the sun rises. What happens if a person enters the masjid in those times? What should he do? 2 ahadith which are ظاهرهما التناقض, outwardly the perception of these 2 ahadith is that they are clashing and they're contradictory. Okay, which hadith do we take? Do we use maslak al-tarjih or maslak al-jam'? Which maslak do we use? Do we try and combine between the 2 ahadith like Imam al-Shafi'i did, rahimahullah ta'ala? Or do we use one hadith and disregard the other hadith like some of the madahib did? Do you understand? So these are all qawa'id and principles you learn through studying shay'an fa shay'an, habba habba, slowly. It's not a race. You don't have to, we're not, alhamdulillah, from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connected the virtues of knowledge to seeking it, not to the destination of becoming a scholar. Allah didn't tell us, and the Prophet didn't say to us, that you will only gain the reward of knowledge once you've become a scholar. But the Prophet ﷺ says, من التمس طريقا يلتمس فيه علما. Whoever seeks a path, whoever treads the path of seeking knowledge, then this is what I will give to him. He didn't say, whoever attains the station of a scholar, I will give this. So it's not the destination, it's the journey. Okay? As long as you are seeking knowledge, even if you don't end up knowing many issues, subhanAllah, but you only know mathalan a few issues, a bad mathalan, you know Tawheed, but you're lacking in fiqh and you're lacking in hadith mathalan. Inshallah, and if you die upon this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise you with Mu'adh ibn Jabal, will raise you with Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, just because you were considered to be someone who was seeking knowledge. So treading that path is in and of itself is virtuous. It's not the destination. And this is from the virtue and the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His blessings and His bounties, inshaAllah. Naam. Naam, tafadhal. Naam.
In replacement to going online and getting fatwa that may not relate to a particular person's situation, how would you advise us and the Tulab al-Ilm to seek fatwa?
It depends what are you looking for. Are you looking for a general fatwa, a specific fatwa? Why is this person seeking a fatwa in the first place? We have to first know the reason why they are seeking a fatwa. Are they seeking a particular fatwa? What is the remembering in Bab, in the book Khulasat Ta'zeem al-Ilm, we covered the chapter or the ma'qid of the adab al-fatwa, how to ask a question. Remember, there were four things that the Shaykh mentioned, Shaykh Salih al-Usaymi, on how to ask a question. You have to first unzur. What is the intention behind the question? Why are you asking the question? What do you hope to gain from the question? Okay? These are all questions that you have to ask yourself. So why are you seeking the fatwa? Are you seeking the fatwa, for example, to find out the ruling on a specific issue, specific topic? In which case, you have to make sure that your issue, the issue that you are actually seeking, is exactly the same as the fatwa that's in front of you. The question is the same. If that's the case, then ahlan wa sahlan. If, for example, it could be, for example, you want to know the ruling on overdrafts or taking credit cards. And you type into Google, مثلا, fatwa Sheikh bin Baz, مثلا, on taking credit cards, مثلا, and then there's a question there, and it's a trustworthy site. The site is trustworthy, and the answer is there. Yes, this type of question you can implement it, because the Sheikh is talking about the act, an action of something. But if there's a question, for example, about a particular person who did this particular thing, or questions about divorce, مثلا, family issues, questions pertaining to private parts, to blood, ad-dima, wealth, all of these questions, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that the best thing to do in those situations is for you to actually go and ask someone that you trust. You pick up the phone and speak to a sheikh who you trust their knowledge, and then you describe the situation to them properly, perfectly. If you withhold some information and he gives you the answer or fatwa based on the information that you've given them, although you've withheld key information, then you'll still be sinful. Okay, it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to give the information as it is, and then inshallah implement that fatwa on yourself, between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So do we say we have to differentiate between the personal question and the question that's
Yeah. So personal questions, for example, you should ask those personal questions yourself. If it's a question about an issue that is am, that touches the Muslims, generally speaking, overdrafts, credit cards, riba, مثلا, working in banks, in conventional banks, what's the ruling on this? Shares, مثلا, buying shares of companies, مثلا, that deal in alcohol, gambling, all of these issues, مثلا, working for example, there was a question that someone asked on recruitment, for example. This is a person who has a recruitment company, and they wanted to hire employees for a company that was a gaming company, and the type of games that this company sold or advertised were basically games that were considered to be of a gambling nature, games that were played in casinos. So it was like poker and all of all the games that I don't know exactly what they are from the top of my head, but all those games that are played in casinos. So dealing with this type of company, what's the ruling on this? Okay, so this is a specific issue for that specific person. Do you understand? this could be different for, and يعني, imagine you read this fatwa and the Mufti says it's impermissible for a person to work with this company because Allah says وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, and then someone asks and says to you, can I become a security guard for a company that يعني, is a gaming company, but the company deals with يعني, has games that are of gambling nature, يعني, games that encourage gambling, يعني, and you say to him, because I heard that fatwa, then it's la yajuz, it's impermissible. This is wrong. Do you understand? Because you've taken one fatwa and implemented it on another situation because of